Up taking that agony and using it as pure fuel to win the 1979 World Youth title. But his first actual World Cup appearance in Spain in 1982 revealed this darker, much more temperamental edge to him. Opponents were brutally kicking and provoking him, basically trying to stop his magic with their fists. And Diego, who was just full of fire and pride, finally snapped. He lashed out, kicked a Brazilian player in pure anger, and was sent off the field in absolute shame. And this right here is where we first really see it. He was a genius, yes, for sure, but he was never a saint. And honestly, he never really pretended to be one either.
Part 3. The Savior of Naples, a Miracle in the South.
Welcome to this explainer. All right, let's just dive right in. Close your eyes for just a second. I want you to picture a tiny house sitting right on the edge of a dirt road in a place called Villa Fiorito. The walls are paper thin, the roof is just corrugated tin, and outside it's this incredibly hot, still night. Now inside, there's a little boy sleeping, but he's not holding a teddy bear or a security blanket. Nope, curled up tightly against his chest, clutched like it might literally run away in the dark, is a real lever football. And that boy's name is Diego. There's a famous quote that captures this whole dynamic perfectly. The world wanted Maradona, the legend, but Diego only ever wanted to play. Because as we're going to see today, despite the unimaginable fame, the absolute mountains of money, and the, total madness that would eventually surround him, that frightened little kid holding the ball, he never truly left him. He was always right there, just beneath the surface. So the big question we're exploring together is this. How exactly did a boy with absolutely nothing become a god to millions of people? We're going to walk through this chronological journey together, and I really want you to pay attention to a recurring theme here, because this is a story of extreme duality. It's a story of profound light and devastating shadow. Part 1. The Boy and the Ball. Villa Fiorito, 1960. Growing up in a desperately poor shantytown on the southern edge of Buenos Aires, Diego learned sacrifice really early on. I mean, he literally watched his mother fake stomach aches at dinner time just so her 8 kids could eat her share of the food. But for his 3rd birthday, a cousin gave him a gift that changed the entire trajectory of his life: a leather football. From that moment on, that ball became his voice, his joy, his total escape. The neighborhood gave him the nickname Pelusa, which translates to fuzz because of his thick, messy hair. But his game, it was anything but soft. By the time he was barely 10 years old, his talent was so undeniable, so outrageously rare, that youth coaches were actually stopping the game to check his ID card. They literally could not believe a kid his size could move like that. 140 games. Let that sink in for a second. That is the astonishing number of matches his youth team, they were called Los Cebollitas, or the Little Onions, went unbeaten. 140 games without a single loss. Actually, to put that into perspective, during halftime at big professional matches, entire stadiums of adults would just stay perfectly quiet in their seats for one reason: just to watch this tiny kid juggle the ball. The whispers had already started. People were already saying this boy was going to save all of Argentine football. Part 2. The First Great Wound, Turning Pain into Fire. Looking at his early years, you can see how fast the pressure mounted. When you have an entire country placing its hopes on your shoulders as a young teenager, the weight is just immense. By 1978, with Argentina actually hosting the World Cup, a 17-year-old Diego thought it was his absolute destiny to play. But the coach, Cesar Menotti, cut him right at the very end. He said Diego was just too young to handle the expectations of a whole nation. A journalist actually found Diego later that cold evening, sitting completely alone under a tree in the dark, just weeping. And the heartbreaking part? He wasn't even crying for himself. He just kept asking, "How do I tell my father?" Argentina went on to win the World Cup without him, and he had to watch the confetti fall from the outside. Well, he ended up taking that agony and using it as pure fuel to win the 1979 World Youth title. But his first actual World Cup appearance in Spain in 1982 revealed this darker, much more temperamental edge to him. Opponents were brutally kicking and provoking him, basically trying to stop his magic with their fists. And Diego, who was just full of fire and pride, finally snapped. He lashed out, kicked a Brazilian player in pure anger, and was sent off the field in absolute shame. And this right here is where we first really see it. He was a genius, yes, for sure, but he was never a saint. And honestly, he never really pretended to be one either.
Part 3. The Savior of Naples, a Miracle in the South.
Now, to fully grasp the weight of his 1984 transfer to the Italian club Napoli, you kind of have to understand Italy at that specific time. The rich, proud North constantly mocked and looked down on the poorer, struggling South. And Naples? Naples was the beating heart of that forgotten South. So when Diego arrived, it wasn't just a sports transfer, okay? It was a cultural miracle. 75,000 people packed into the stadium just to see him hold up a Napoli shirt for the very first time. They didn't even come for a match. They came because they saw themselves in him. He was a poor boy from a slum, looked down upon, this massive underdog fighting the whole world. He just understood these people right down in his bones.
And then, against all odds, the impossible happened. In 1987 and then again in 1990, Napoli actually won the Italian league. The poor South finally beat the rich North. It was unreal. The city literally didn't sleep. People wept in the streets, they lit fireworks until dawn, and they painted his face on the walls of buildings like he was an angel or a god. And why did they do that? Because he gave them so much more than just trophies. He gave them their pride back. He made the forgotten feel seen.
Part 4. 4 minutes in Mexico, the 1986 World Cup. So the 1986 quarterfinal against England. That was never, ever just a football match. The air was thick with the lingering pain, anger, and tension of the Falklands War from just 4 years prior. And in the span of exactly 4 minutes in that stadium, Diego completely encapsulated the two extreme halves of his soul. You had the trickster and the sinner sitting right alongside the absolute genius and sporting saint. Let's break these two moments down. First up, the ball floats high into the penalty box. Diego, who, remember, is much shorter than the English goalkeeper, leaps up and deliberately punches the ball right into the net with his left hand. And the craziest part, the referee misses it entirely. It was clear, deliberate cheating. When they asked him about it later, Diego gave this legendary quote, "A little with the head of Maradona and a little with the hand of God." Now, the English were understandably furious about this, and frankly, they never forgave him. But to many Argentines, it felt like a scandalous yet deeply justified form of revenge after the war.
But then, literally just 4 minutes later, absolute genius takes over. He receives the ball way deep in his own half. He effortlessly slips past two defenders. The stadium noise just builds into this massive roar as he keeps running, covering 60 meters with the ball seemingly glued to his feet, beating 3 more English players. Finally, he rounds the keeper and scores with this impossibly soft touch. It was later voted the greatest goal in World Cup history, the goal of the century. I mean, really think about that for a second. In just 4 minutes, one man showed the whole world both halves of his soul.
Part 5. The fall from grace, swallowed by the legend. He essentially carried Argentina on his back to win that entire 1986 World Cup. But the thing is, when you reach the absolute top of the mountain, there is really only one way left to go. The world wanted Maradona the god, but the god was just too big for one man to carry. Away from all the cameras, back in Naples, he was suffocating. He had absolutely no quiet, no normal days to just be Diego. He drifted dangerously close to the powerful crime families of the city. And tragically, he found a false sense of escape in cocaine. You know, a drug that promises you everything and then slowly steals it all back. He was just slowly being swallowed whole by his own massive legend.
His decline became brutally public with a ban in 1991. But he tried for one last flicker of that old magic at the 1994 World Cup in the United States. He actually scores this beautiful goal against Greece. And then he runs straight to the television camera. His eyes are wild and wide open, and he just screams right into the lens. It's known as the Scream, and it is a haunting image. Because just days later, he fails another drug test and is completely expelled from the tournament in front of the whole world. It was a 17-year journey, ending in very public shame.
Part 6. A flawed, glorious human, the legacy of a broken god. He officially retired a few years after that 1994 World Cup, literally weeping as he said goodbye to the game. But, as we all know, the body remembers what we do to it. The years that followed were hard, they were cruel, filled with really severe heart problems. The boy who was once too fast for anyone to catch simply could not outrun himself anymore. When he passed away in November 2020 at the age of 60, Argentina literally stopped. They declared 3 whole days of national mourning. He once famously said, "I am black or white. I will never be gray." And you know, the millions of people who lit candles in Naples didn't cry because he was this perfect, flawless idol. They loved him exactly because he was not. He was proud, he was broken, he was messy, and he was gloriously human. He gave the world more joy than his own body could hold.
So what should you actually take away from this explainer? Well, the story of Maradona wasn't really just about football at all. It's a reminder of the magic that lives inside the people the world tends to forget. The ones in the tin houses, the ones sitting at the back of the line, the overlooked ones. He proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the smallest among us can rise to the absolute highest heights, even while holding both wonder and ruin in the very same hands.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. We all carry light and shadow inside us. Have you felt that too? It's a great reminder that you don't have to be perfect to be loved. I want you to remember that little boy asleep with a ball in his arms. He held onto it like it was the start of everything. And well, it was. So hold on to whatever your small thing is right now. Before you go, I'd love to ask you, of all the moments in his life we talked about, which one moved you the most? Was it the hungry boy with the ball, the lonely teenager, or maybe the flawed god of Naples? Drop a comment down below and let me know.